Erica Show. I'm your host, Erica from Crypto Soul. The Erica Show is an effort to stay connected with the village in this space despite our current limitations. So through the Erica Show, we can hear from industry people, leaders that we haven't really met in a while. 안녕하세요. 크립토소울 에리카입니다. 에리카쇼는 줌 인터뷰를 통해서 대표적인 리더들과 함께 소통하는 기회를 제공하기 만들게 되었고요. 오늘은 아발란체 대표이자 코레대 교수님이신 에민 군 시rer 교수님을 모셨습니다. Today, I'm more than delighted and honored to introduce today's guest, Professor Emin Gün Sirer of Avalanche. It's more than a year since we last met. Gun was our keynote speaker at Battle Asia 2019, and that happened last July in Seoul, Korea. Good, welcome.
Very nice to be here. Very nice to see you, Erica. It's been some time. Very nice to chat with you again.
How has it been for you during these crazy times?
It's been great, actually. So in the year that since I last saw you, we developed a lot of code. Our system is about to go mainnet very, very soon. And I think we ushered in the bull market in altcoins. We were the first coin to do a big sale this year, and we're very proud of the excitement we generated. I'm really happy about where we are. Yeah, despite the hardship that 2020 has brought in, I think we've done fairly okay so far.
The team is definitely building, right?
We're humbled by the support we got from our community, and we're delighted to be where we are.
Awesome. So for those of, I'm sure many of you, most people know you, but for those of you people who are new to the blockchain space, are not familiar, could you give us a short intro of yourself and what you're currently working on?
Sure. I have been a professor at Cornell University in computer science for about 19 years. So I was very early on excited by cryptocurrencies. In 2002, I built one of the first cryptocurrencies minted by proof of work. That was 6 years before the Bitcoin white paper came along, as most people will know. So, but I did not pursue it. Back then, people were really worried about cryptocurrencies. I was counseled not to do it as an academic career because, you know, there was no funding. And in the US, people were very afraid. It was right after 9/11. They were concerned about terrorist financing. And so all of my wiser, older colleagues said, you know, this is exciting, but don't do it. You will never get funding for it. So I stayed away from the area. I worked on other peer-to-peer systems. I worked on peer-to-peer reputation and so forth. Then Bitcoin came. And one of my claims to fame was finding one of the biggest flaws in the Bitcoin protocol by Satoshi and coming up with a fix for it known as selfish mining. People didn't want to believe, like they wanted to believe that Satoshi was perfect, that there was no errors or mistakes that he ever made. And that's not true. He's human like everybody else, although he's brilliant, and his core contribution is really a huge step. And just to give everybody a sort of a lay of the land, I consider Satoshi's contribution the second biggest breakthrough in distributed systems. This is my area of expertise. The first breakthrough came from two colleagues of mine who both have Turing Awards.
Wow.
And this area has been around for about 45, 50 years. So for many decades, people worked in this area called classical consensus protocols, started by Leslie Lamport and Barbara Liskov. Both of them have Turing Awards. Then Satoshi came and said, look, here's a different way of doing consensus. And he showed the world the potential of cryptocurrencies. And it's a big, big breakthrough. So I found a problem with his protocol. We fixed it. Then I worked on a whole bunch of things. I worked on lightweight and scalable consensus protocols. I worked on coin security. I worked on layer 2 protocols. But most recently, I started working on what I consider to be the third and final breakthrough in consensus protocols, known as the Avalanche protocol. Today, I'm the CEO of Avalabs, which is the company that's building the software for the Avalanche network. And we're about to go mainnet very soon, and I'm really excited. It's a fun time to be working on these systems and in this general area. What
a long and awesome story. It just basically explains like how you came into the rabbit hole, crypto rabbit hole. It's a long story. So I think it's a case where like the academia kind of came into the crypto scene, right? I mean, there's many professors that entered the crypto space, and you're one of the most well-known professors who have been really active in the research and also in developing. So I'm really excited to have you here because I love academia. Personally, I love the academia, and also I love the practical usage of the academia, basically. So
I worked fairly hard, Erica, to get my colleagues interested in the area, and I worked fairly hard to establish a respected space. Initially, people were dismissing cryptocurrencies as toys, as something on the side, it'll never amount to anything, and so forth. There were attempts to regulate it. I spent a fair bit of time, I think, second to Coin Center. So Coin Center in the US is a lobbying organization that meets with lawmakers. Second to Coin Center, I think I'm probably the second person who has briefed the most number of politicians, at least in the US. Wow. So I tried to get them to stay off of regulating cryptocurrencies, and we are where we are. I think we are in a very, very nice spot. I think the world now has understood the value proposition of these systems. There's a lot of excitement around them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I admire the work that you did and also do currently. So I've been a huge follower of you for quite some time. So, so most recent community members, like right now, who entered this space, know you as the CEO of Avalanche. But I knew you way before that, and you were well known as the core director of the legendary IC3, because like I have been obsessed with IC3, and I don't really understand most of it because I'm not technical, but still I really admire the work that the organization did, and it still is running, right? It just recently had a boot camp, which was on YouTube as well. Could you just tell me, like, since you were one of the co-directors of IC3, what's the main goal and focus of the IC3?
So we founded IC3, I think maybe 3.5 years ago or so. And the goal was to create an institute for the study of cryptocurrencies and smart contracts. The goal, there were multiple goals really. The main one is to establish a scientific foundation for these systems. There is, as you know, there are a lot of people coming up with new protocols or claiming to come up with new protocols, and they're just inventing something. And so we wanted to make sure that they were doing things that were sound, that would not lead to funds lost, that would not lead to people getting hurt. That's one. As you know, smart contracts are notoriously difficult to get right. They are buggy often, and they cause issues. And so we wanted to establish a discipline where people could reason about the correctness of smart contracts. And so to this end, we brought together 8 different schools from around the world. So, Cornell, Berkeley, UIUC, EPFL, ETH Zurich, University College London, Technion, and maybe there might still be some that I'm forgetting, but there are at least 8 schools at the moment. And I would say about 20 or more faculty members, and I would say somewhere between 100 to 150 graduate students working on blockchains and related technologies. We are the biggest academic group in the space. We are probably one of the more prolific one, probably the most prolific one in aggregate because we're so big also. And we've been working to establish a good foundation for this space. And we've been doing outreach efforts, like running boot camps that you might have seen online, holding speaker series, holding webinars, talking to companies, engaging in partnerships to make sure that their offerings are safe and sound. These kinds of activities are sort of the bread and butter of IC3.
Yeah, awesome. It creates like the legitimacy of the space, basically. It's like a great ground for the space. So I really enjoy the content and the fact that maybe you can add an Asian school. Who knows? Maybe Asian university.
I think it's high time for us to grow. And there's a lot of research coming out of Asia. And I think we should expand. I was the expansionary one. There are a couple of directors, and everybody has a different vision. I have been the one that was always in favor of being more inclusive and adding more people. And certainly there are fantastic people working in this space in Korea, in China, in Japan, not to mention many other countries. So yes, I want to expand some more. It's probably high time.
Yeah, for those people who want to check out the academic content, they should really check out the IC3 like platform in general, like the website, YouTube channel. It's really prolific of like all these great content. So I recommend, highly recommend, and I'm sure you do too.
If people want to check things out, they're really, I'll give you a vignette. I'll give you a short story of something that our students did. So, you know, in case people are listening to this and they're thinking, oh, he's a professor, they do boring research. Let me tell you how not boring it is. So one of our students came by and he said, hey, I have this idea. I have this idea that what we could do, you know, everybody knows that sometimes fees spike on the Ethereum blockchain. Mm-hmm. So the student says, well, look, we know that these fees spike. Why don't we create a vehicle by which we can reserve some space on the blockchain when the fees are cheap and then use that space later on? And so we said, okay, that sounds like an intriguing idea. Then he says, well, okay, but to do this, I need some money. And we're like, okay, how much? $60,000. So we give him $60,000. And, you know, everybody who knows about research and professors in academia, they know what we do, right? We take money from various sources. We spend it on intellectual activity, trials, experiments like this student was trying to do. And then the money sort of runs out and you start a new project and so on. So this starts happening. And then he comes back and says, hey, you know, I have a good idea. You know, this block space that I reserve, it could be used to jump ahead of people's transactions on DEXs, on decentralized exchanges. So he starts using the money that we gave him for this. And before we know it, 2 seconds later, he comes back and says, you know, guys, I'm making $3,000 a day. So it's about $1 million a year. Now we have a different problem because we're not really used to creating money with our research activities. The university literally does not have an ability to say, we gave money, but then it grew. They don't know how to accommodate it. Anyway, it was hilarious. The whole thing is hilarious. If you want to learn how to jump ahead and how to do Flash Boys type attacks on decentralized exchanges, for instance, that was an IC3 project. It was very influential and very fun. People can go check it out. It's a great study of game theory and system design and distributed systems.
Wow. So it's a practical, basically, it's just, practical use. So there we go. It's just proven right there. Awesome. Now let's talk about Avalanche, which is your main focus of your project. So on August 21st, Avalanche mainnet release candidate Everest was released. Is it like an Avalanche Everest, like a mountain?
Yeah, we're getting higher. We used to have the Denali testnet. Now we have the Everest testnet.
Denali?
Yes.
I love the names. How is this a significant step forward, and when can we expect the actual mainnet?
The mainnet is imminent. So my goal was to be ready to go mainnet in August, and Everest is essentially our sort of best effort at building something that is a candidate for becoming a mainnet. It's functionally complete. It supports very high-speed transactions. It supports, that is, faster than Visa transactions, 4,500 transactions per second.
Wow.
It supports very quick finality, 1 second. You don't have to wait for 6 confirmations, an hour, etc. Things happen in the blink of an eye, and they're immutable and permanent. So very fast, very scalable system. And so Everest supports these. It supports the EVM. So it supports smart contracts in their full generality. It's byte-by-byte compatible with the Ethereum virtual machine. So those of your listeners who want a scalable Ethereum experience can check out the Avalanche testnet, and they will see that it's the same exact system, except much faster, and the fees are like a fraction of a cent. And it's a flexible system. It allows people to create their own virtual machines. And we have plans in store for WASM support very, very near in the future as well. The actual we also support NFTs, so non-fungible tokens. And we have great plans in store for the future. But in answer to your question, the mainnet, I was hoping to do it this month in August. We decided to wait a little bit, and that's because we want exchanges to support us. We want wallets to support us, and the integration with them as you know, it always takes time and effort, and it's outside our control. They might need a few more weeks. So we'll probably be going mainnet in mid-September or so.
Oh, so the platform is basically ready, but then like the process of getting connected to exchanges and wallets. Yeah, that takes a long time.
Synchronization is a little difficult. It's outside our control,
Right.
but it's just a few weeks away. So we're excited. We can't wait to go out.
Awesome. That's great. I mean, I know that the protocol is very technical, and for those who are not technical, like in the Asian community as well, like they had a hard time understanding in like a simple sentence of what it's about. Can you possibly describe in a single sentence? Is it possible, the Avalanche protocol? Can you like make it into a very simple sentence, or is it is it not possible?
So there are two things I can do. I can tell you in one sentence what the network is aiming to do.
Okay.
So Avalanche is an asset creation platform.
Okay.
It's a platform for creating digital assets and putting on a blockchain anything and everything that you might want to sell online. That's what it's about. It is not trying to compete with Bitcoin. It is not trying to compete with the dollar. We are not trying to pull down the fiat world. We're not trying to replace it. You know, I have a lot of respect for people who want to do that. We're not trying to do that. At the same time, it is not trying to be a world computer. You know, it's not competing with Ethereum. It is not trying to be a giant computational engine in the sky, you know, where you put some computation and people interact with it. That's not what we're trying to do. We support that. That's just a sub-network for us. We are so flexible that we can have the entirety of Ethereum as a sub-network, what we call the contract chain underneath Avalanche. But that is also not what we are trying to do. We are really trying to digitize all sorts of things that should be traded online, that should be open to everybody on Earth. So imagine that you are in Asia and you decide that you want to buy some stocks from some other stock market. You know, you've seen, for example, the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, and you want to invest in those stocks. Well, you could go through a broker that's local to your country and pay fees and commissions, or you could just do it on a platform that supports it. Or vice versa. Imagine that you're a company in Asia and you want to, you know, and other people see the potential in what you do. And I do. I've been to, you know, just about, well, not Vietnam actually, where you are at the moment, I suspect. Well, I've been to quite a few Asian countries, and I have my favorites, and I would love to invest. But I can tell you firsthand, it's very difficult, especially for an American to invest in foreign countries. It's beyond the capabilities of many, but it's very easy with the Avalanche solution. And going beyond simple examples involving stocks, imagine that you want to bet on the future of real estate. You want to have fractional ownership of real estate funds. You want to collateralize securities. You want to go into income sharing agreements. So there's a whole gamut of assets ranging from traditional, very well understood things like stocks and bonds, to derivatives, to perpetual swaps. These are all financial assets, to commodities, to all sorts of new kinds of instruments that people haven't even thought about yet. And so we are here to support all of them because we give two amazing features. One of them is the quick finality and the scale. And the second one is the immense flexibility. We're one of the few systems out there that can allow somebody to do a compliant offering. That is an offering that respects the local laws and the local regulations that pertain to the issuer. So for just about every other blockchain, they are a one-size-fits-the-world kind of an offering. And in reality, they don't fit anybody. They can't be localized. Whereas with Avalanche, we support this notion that we call sub-networks, where a sub-network can be specific to a given legal jurisdiction and therefore can obey the rules of that jurisdiction. So I said one sentence. I gave you the one sentence, but then I launched into a tirade. But I hope that was somewhat informative. We're very different from the chains out there, I think, in many different ways. We're not just one crypto gimmick. We have a fundamental new approach to consensus. Nobody can boast anywhere near the numbers we can achieve. So our performance is unprecedented, but we also have this model that's very different from everyone else, that is flexible, that allows us to do compliant offerings of assets.
Can you tell me more about the model that enables like fast finality?
How the protocol works?
In a nutshell, yes.
In a nutshell, sure.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned before, the space of distributed systems has been around for 45 years. And there used to be only two approaches to consensus. One of them is the approach that we call classical consensus protocols. And you see these in private permission networks. And typically what they require is everybody has to hear from everybody else to make sure that there is enough sufficient weight behind the decision. It's kind of like voting protocol in a Senate or a parliament, if you're familiar with those.
Yeah.
These protocols are very fragile, it turns out. And they've been known for, as I said, 45 years or so. And in that time frame, people have explored all kinds of variants, and Satoshi knew about them. And he said, look, this is all fine and good, but these are very fragile protocols. They fall apart. They don't scale well. If you want to have more than 100 participants, they don't work very well. The best classical protocol is a protocol called Hot Stuff, and it was designed by my PhD student, Ted Yin.
Oh, really?
Yes, and he spent the summer working on it, came back and said, hey, I worked on this cool system, it's very nice, and but I actually want to work on the even cooler system, Avalanche. So now he's a chief architect on Avalanche. Ted's Hot Stuff is the system behind Facebook's Libra. So Libra is using a classical protocol. Right?
Yes.
And Hot Stuff is a very nice protocol, but it only can scale to about 100 participants. So that's why that system is forever going to be a small, it's just a small group of Mark Zuckerberg's friends. That's what it is. I mean, you pay to enter that small clique, and that's what it is. The second big approach was with Satoshi Nakamoto and his mining. And so proof of work protocols are very well understood by now. They're fantastic. They're very robust. They don't scale. They just don't scale. And so Bitcoin is trying to scale at a different layer, but we'll see if that succeeds, and it's taking a long time. The third big breakthrough is Avalanche. It works differently, and it is robust in the sense that we don't have to, it can tolerate a lot of what we call flux in the system. I don't have to know everything there is to know in the system. I can have a rough idea of who is participating in my system, and that's sufficient. And the way it works behind the scenes, this is my technical description, is it works by what we call repeated subsampled voting. In essence, what you do is you ask a couple of people whether or not a particular transaction should be accepted. It's like, hey guys, Alice wants to pay Bob. Is she good or not? And so you do that repeatedly, and you flip your vote depending on what your friends are telling you. And this is really the core idea. And it sounds really simple, and it is. It's very simple. But the magic is that the math shows that a very small number of rounds allows even a very large network to converge. So you ask, and after a while you go, I have asked enough people, and they have asked enough people, such that we have great coverage of this overall network. It is now time, it is now safe to commit and accept Alice's payment. So the extensive proofs and maths behind the system show that this can achieve finality in less than a second. And because people they don't have to hear from everyone. And because complicated cryptography is not involved, transactions can be super fast in this system.
That's why it's called subset. It's like a partial, I don't know.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes,
subset.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You are subsampling your audience. So that's right. And the subsets are tiny. So you're not asking, there might be 100,000 nodes that you want to coordinate with. You only need to ask 5 to 10 of them. And you just ask maybe 20 times, and at the end you're like, okay, I'm done. I think we're good to go. And that's a pretty amazing thing to be able to do.
Oh, yeah, I feel like I'm listening to a lecture. Like it's like a college lecture.
Oh, you triggered the professor in me. That's what happens.
I was a master's student. What can I do? I cannot help it. Lecture oriented. Awesome. So last time I saw the live stream with Cosmos and Billy when you were comparing the two platforms. That was really interesting, by the way. Can you summarize? I mean, you get compared a lot, I think, between other platforms, and you did mention that you don't want to like replicate the other platforms. It's different, but still, how would you compare with like Cosmos, Polkadot? They didn't appear in the scene, but still, you did mention Polkadot, I think, in the conversation as well. For clarity, can you like compare these three, like Cosmos, Avalanche, and Polkadot?
Sure. Sure, of course. So these are all friends of mine. These are all family systems, and they're all systems that should get respect. So let me just be very clear. Sometimes, anytime you do a comparison, it gets people upset. But I think I can do a fair job of comparing, or I'll try to do a fair job as best as I can, modulo my misunderstandings. But these are all credible efforts in this space. And as you know, there are 6,000 coins, and there are quite a few of them that I wouldn't even bother to compare to because they're just, kind of hokey or broken at some fundamental level. Cosmos is based on a protocol known as PBFT. And PBFT is a precursor to hot stuff. It came maybe 20 years or 18 years before hot stuff did. And what Cosmos has at its core is a brilliant improvement on PBFT. So in a dimension that I didn't expect it could be improved on. And that improvement came in a master's thesis, which is really a testament to the strength of the people involved. They're just working on the system for a year and they improved the protocol. So it's a classical protocol. It's a modified version of PBFT. It has the property though, that being a classical protocol, it only scales to about 100 participants. So it can have any number of users, but the validators, the active participants in the protocol, is limited to a smallish number, like around several dozen, so around 100. So there is that. So that's why Cosmos's throughputs are likely to be limited, and Cosmos's participation is going to certainly be limited because of that limitation. So that's one point of comparison. Avalanche can accommodate millions of participants because of the way it operates. So that's one big qualitative difference between us. Cosmos, like Avalanche, supports the notion of subnetworks. So they call it zones. Yeah. And so we support subnetworks. They support zones. They have an inter-zone communication protocol. I don't know if it's implemented in their current code. Last time I checked, it wasn't. So they have that effort underway, but it's not fully supported. Let's see. Avalanche supports the EVM in its full entirety. And Cosmos did not support it until recently, but then they added this component called Ethermint that supports the EVM now. So that's a point of similarity. And there are some really great people working on Cosmos, and we also have some really brilliant people working on Avalanche. That's another point of similarity. Polkadot. That Polkadot is different. Polkadot comes from the group that is very much behind the design of the Ethereum virtual machine. And I haven't looked at Polkadot carefully enough to say anything. It's a system that also wants to do what we call interoperability, what they call interoperability, via this notion of parachains. And I don't quite follow exactly what they plan to do, but the interoperability story there seems to require a lot of pre-coordination. And for both Cosmos and Polkadot, I believe actually maybe not for Polkadot, but for Cosmos, I think, the security of the entire system might be as weak as the security of a single subnetwork. So that's a security model difference. I don't know what it is for Polkadot, and I don't want to presume. Otherwise, they're a delegated proof of stake system similar to everybody else that's coming out these years. Polkadot is. You know, I don't know. I think, Polkadot is a single virtual machine kind of a system. So both Cosmos and, actually not Cosmos, Polkadot is, and they support the WASM. Avalanche supports both the Ethereum virtual machine and WASM, and any other number of virtual machines as well. I think that's a reasonable comparison off the top of my head. I have to say I haven't studied these systems in great depth, so I haven't poured through their code. I've looked through the Cosmos code, but I haven't looked into Polkadot in great detail. So this is my comparison.
It just launched, so it's just causing a lot of interest. So I was trying to take Polkadot into the scene because it's being compared a lot to Cosmos. So I was always very interested. But okay, awesome. Thank you for the fine comparison. That was great.